So I asked the question, what do you enjoy least about being a wrestling fan? And I got about 200 responses, and almost all of them were exactly the same thing. The fans. Disagreements between fans. Fans finding it difficult to basically pick a side and just support it without tearing down the other side. The war between WWE and AEW fans, all of that, which raises huge questions as to how difficult it is to just be a wrestling fan nowadays. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about wrestling fans and how they may make it difficult or better to be a wrestling fan. When I'm sat in an arena, I'm feeling that swell of passion from people. When I'm sat with a couple of friends watching the Royal Rumble and having a few drinks, I'm feeling that passion and that enjoyment. I'm hearing people pop and have a great time. But when you go on social media, all I hear on social media is how much everybody hates wrestling. Twitch has thankfully been a bit different, but if you go on YouTube and you're looking for a news video, all you'll hear at the moment is, "This is the worst Raw I've ever seen." And it's really painful to just relive the exact same thing. I know Raw's been bad, but when it comes to fans, we'll suddenly compare it to, yeah, Raw's bad, but at least I'm not an AEW fan if they're on WWE's side. If they're on the AEW side, why do you bother watching any WWE? You should only watch AEW, and it's really painful. It's not just directed at AEW and WWE, though. You've also got indie wrestling. People who, much like gaming, why do you play on console? You should be playing on PC. That's what real gamers do. You get that with indie wrestling as well. You very much get that with indie wrestling as well. And it's painful. There are literally wrestling magazines that say they're only for real wrestling fans. And it is massively excluding people. Basically, if you're a casual, what they're saying to you is go to hell, we don't want you. If you don't watch every single show, you're basically told you're not worth it. That disgusts me. That is wrestling fandom, and it's become a real problem. Michael says, the whole AEW versus WWE war between fans is the most annoying. Talking trash about a wrestler then calling everyone toxic who defends their favourites might be the worst. Agreed. The hypocrisy present is utterly ridiculous. Ed says, the IWC on Twitter and YouTube is awful. Busted open on Twitter a bit better. I agree with that. Welcome, Jay Quick. Thank you very much for the host and welcome to the show. And Noob says, wrestling fans are becoming more and more difficult. They don't like the way wrestlers being booked. They want to see storylines and consistent character arcs. And the YWC is extremely toxic. I'd imagine you were going for IWC there, for Internet Wrestling Community, unless you mean YouTube Wrestling Community, in which case I get exactly what you mean. Now, I had about 180 out of those 200 responses were saying that the fans are the worst thing about being a wrestling fan. Second on the list was the overall transparency in wrestling now, and the fact that almost everything is spoiled. Now, that comes down to the current standard of wrestling journalism, what wrestling journalism entails, whether it's just, for example, interviews and the like, which I know a lot of wrestling journalists who just do interviews, talk about different things and make their living that way. But you also get a lot of wrestling journalists who are pure gossip columnists who will literally say, okay, the opening segment of WWE SmackDown this week is going to be this exact storyline featuring these exact phrases. This character and this character will do this. And it's infuriating, especially when you see somebody accidentally post a spoiler, delete it, and then journalists jumping on it and making sure everybody sees it. That worries me. That worries me. Michael says another good one is all the fans who fantasy book everything, then when it doesn't happen the way they want, they complain about how everything sucks. I always really enjoy how often wrestling fans forget that someone has to lose wrestling matches. Someone has to lose. For example, on Monday, during Monday Night Raw, we had sort of a quiet section at the end of the second hour where we had Lucha House Party, we had Drew Gulak versus Angel Garza. Not wrestlers who are very popular at the moment in the grand scheme of things compared to your Daniel Bryan, your Roman Reigns, and the like. However, that said, they're not going to get popular unless they get on TV. So it's bold and positive of WWE to do that. However, a lot of wrestling fans want their favourites pushed over everybody else's favourites, which creates a real war. Jay Quick says, I respect everybody's opinions, that's why I don't crap on stuff, because I try to just enjoy stuff. I still am negative when I feel wrestling could be done better, but at the same time, I think when it comes to wrestling punditry, I'm probably more positive than a lot. It says, fantasy booking is fun, agreed, but yeah, people get way too wrapped up in their own version, in their own instead of what's on TV. Yeah, you have to sometimes give people and wrestling companies the benefit of the doubt, and I just don't think that happens. Noob says a lot of wrestling fans saying using hashtags said wrestlers deserve better. They did. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes it's just about trying to get someone the attention they deserve, and sometimes people will get pushed as a result of that. Rusev Day did result in a push. Then the fans kind of moved on, and there's the issue. Once someone gets pushed so long, fans tend to get bored and start booing. It's a problem. It's a real problem. Becky Lynch, at the height of her popularity, got some real hate, particularly in the feud with Sasha Banks, for retaining the championship. I don't know. We've got a very good crowd here that I'm very, very proud to call the Colohunity, the Unity, whatever we end up calling it. But we are where we are, and outside there in the wider world, a lot of different wrestling pundits, wrestling journalists intentionally appeal to negativity. Whether it's their opinion or not, they will jump on whatever negative opinion is popular because it will make them a bigger deal. I think I would have maybe 20,000 more Twitter followers if I hated Roman Reigns. But I never did.